You thought Jaws was just a movie? No resemblance to reality. Well, look at this right here in Michigan. If we have a Jaws, this is it, a 34-pound Great Lakes muskie. Look at the teeth on that. You're going to hear all about the story, how it was caught, and the fellows who got it in the boat in just a moment, because it's Thursday night and time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties, we'll look around again at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan.
This could very well be the largest Great Lakes muskie taken in Michigan this year. 34 pounds what?
34 pounds, 4 ounces.
4 ounces. This is the guy who caught it right here, Richard Larry. And fortunately, your boys, David and Dennis, were with you in the boat, and you got them to hold this fish on the show.
Right, that's why I brought him here today.
Boy, and they're loving every minute of it, aren't you guys? The fish is kind of heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, Dick told me, he said he really didn't know how big this fish was until some of the guys in another boat hollered, "Let's see it," and he tried to lift it up. And he realized how large it was.
When this fish hit, did it hit unusually strong or make any leaps or anything like that?
No, it didn't leap out of the water, and when it hit, just had the real singing like any other muskie. It was, at first you don't realize, if it's that big or not. You know it's a muskie, not a pike. Pike won't rip the drag out like a muskie will.
Well, when you first saw it, how long was it before you first saw this fish?
I fought the fish for about 10 minutes before it finally came up to the surface.
That probably gave you goosebumps to see that.
Oh, it sure did.
and then how long was it before you got it up to the boat?
Another 10 minutes before we finally gaffed it and had it in the boat.
Well, and you had it alongside the boat. How long? How long does it take to gaff a fish like this?
Well, it took us about 5 minutes to really bring it in the boat. My friend Andy Godinsky was my net man, and he missed it twice with a net.
Oh. That's dangerous.
The second time, the pole bent pretty good, and we decided to get the gaff. He went to gaff it with a 4-foot gaff, and he busted the gaff into it. The fourth time we had it up to the boat, he finally, we had it right close, and he eased the gaff under the gills, and we got it in.
That's fisherman's luck. That fish cooperated. Well, Ned, let's look at the teeth on this. Ned Fogel, you're from the DNR Fisheries Division, and you think that this would be the largest one?
This is really an efficient predator. It has teeth all over the mouth, extremely large teeth in the top and along the sides for grasping prey. It has large teeth along the roof of the mouth, on the tongue. That's why you have to be careful when you grab one of these saucets, a pike or a muskie, so you don't stick your hand underneath. You could get cut by these teeth back.
Yeah, right there. These are all teeth right on the tongue.
And of course,
there.
the mouth is extremely large, so they can take a very large fish in.
Boy, they're quite a predator.
They're very efficient.
Well, you caught this. Where's your lure here? Here, your rod and lure. Is that about 50-pound test line?
That's 40-pound test monofilament.
Wow, and this, such a surprise, a drifter believer. Most of the muskies seem to be caught on that. And look at that, we can get a close-up of this. You'll see that this is a very old lure. Look at how it's all hacked up.
That's not an old lure. It was, I think, maybe the second time I've used it. It's fairly new, and that was
that's
what
these
fish did to it.
This is probably why it busted some of the teeth loose that it had. They have a tendency to do this. They hit so hard and grab one so hard, they will bust teeth loose in their mouth.
Okay, well, that's a great fish. You fished the tournaments.
I fished a few tournaments. This year, not so many. I've had to work a lot of overtime. And
hey, if you're working,
right?
Don't complain.
Have to pay for the boat and the muskie equipment.
Right. Well, Richard Larry, his boat right here he puts on his shirt is Amberjack, and he said he puts that on his shirt because most people recognize fishermen out on the lake by their boat name, right?
Yeah. When you're trolling out there, you'll be talking to a lot of different fellows, and you'll
know you by your
troll
boat.
them all day with them, and they'll know you by the boat. Then when you come into a weigh-in at a tournament or any other time at a dock, and you'll stand right next to them like I am to you, and you won't know who they are. And,
but this is Amberjack, who caught possibly the largest muskie in Michigan. Well, right now, let's go to another fish story. Ed Groves was fishing a couple weekends ago, I think. Ed, tell us about that in the trophy report.
2 weeks ago, we tried our luck for salmon off Frankfurt where the fishing has been hot. Our boat was the Whitecap. Our captain, Jack Duffy, a 10-year veteran of the Great Lakes, who's in the record book with the state record brown trout. Charter Captain Frank Arliss served as first mate, so we had lots of expertise aboard. I was especially happy for this trip because my dad had never chartered like this on the Great Lakes. He had never caught a salmon. The man who taught me how to put a worm on a hook, to be quiet in the boat, and how to fight a bass and keep it out of the weeds, now I was treating him to a new fishing experience. As we left port, the piers were dotted with anglers hopeful of catching a salmon or two that were close to shore, toying with the idea of heading upstream to spawn. Duffy and Arleth rigged the rods with their favorite and most successful combination, a dodger, which is a shiny metal attractor trailed by an artificial squid. This is what Duffy uses to take his salmon and trout. We trolled with the sleeping bear dunes in the distance. The day was calm and all signs looked good. Captain Duffy showed us graph paper from last year at this time in these waters. Salmon were stacked up. Today we marked a lot of fish, but he points out a thermocline. That's a line on the graph which indicates a drastic change in the water temperature down a ways, and this thermocline was playing havoc with everyone's luck this day. Finally a salmon hit, and my brother Terry, who had never been salmon fishing, took the rod. Bass don't battle like this, he said, but with some help from Captain Frank, we had our first Chinook salmon aboard. Then it was Dad's turn. His rod popped and the battle was on. A lot different than inland lake fishing when I was a kid. The rule about keeping quiet in a boat is definitely lifted when you're salmon fishing. The battle raged. He and his sons were excited, especially when he put his first Great Lake salmon in the boat. My brother Tom followed with another king, not his first time for salmon, but a thrill nonetheless. We had a great day, thanks to the weather, the salmon that cooperated, and the expertise of Jack Duffy and Frank Arleth. It made a special trip for my dad, a special trophy report for me, because I can name the man who taught me to fish as our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Angler of the Week.
It's a good mess of fish. We caught these in 3 hours with Pete Rubianis, Dave Richey, and quite a fishing party. But a question that you folks might have when you get a lot of fish like this in the boat or on the dock is, what kind are they? Now, we actually have 3 different species here, right, Pete?
Yeah, we got 3 different species. We got king salmon, also called Chinook, coho, and brown trout.
Okay, now, most of these are Chinook salmon. What's the easiest way to tell? When you glance at them, how do you know that most are Chinook?
Well, I've been fishing so much, it's just at a glance I can tell, but I don't go by the mouth as much as a lot of people. But on the coho salmon, you take like this Chinook here, you got all the spots on the tail.
Okay, the entire tail has spots. Okay.
And you take the coho and they don't.
All right. Well, that's a good comparison right there. Does that always hold true?
Basically, yeah. And the tail on a coho is a lot wider, too, at the bottom on the size coho. Compare this size coho to that size Chinook, and the tail will be wider at the base.
Okay, well, let's get a little smaller. Chinook over here. Oh, I see, narrower.
Right
there, proportionately.
Right here. Right.
Okay, and that, of course, this is a Chinook with spots all over the tail. And you look over all of these fish. Get up here, look at them all, and they all have spots on the tail. Okay, and characteristically, you can grab a Chinook pretty well by the tail. Now we have a fish right here that doesn't have spots on the tail. You tend to not be able to grab it by the tail very well. What is this one?
This is a brown trout here, and the characteristics of it is completely different from the coho and the Chinook. You can just lay them down and tell all the big irregular spots on the side.
Large sort of X-shaped spots even.
Plus, up on the head here, you notice on the gill cover and stuff, you got spots. Notice on the coho and the kings, you don't.
Yeah, and they're quite large.
Right.
Also, the body of a brown trout is fat.
Right, it's like a football. They call them football browns. Some of your brown trout aren't quite like this. They can be narrower, but a good share of them are like, they call them football browns because they, fat, short and fat.
Okay, well, there they are, brown trout, a coho salmon, and the rest are Chinook. But Dave Richey, outdoor writer for the Detroit News, what are the techniques that you use? You don't always go necessarily by the tails.
Well, I don't always necessarily go by the tail, but that's one of the major determining factors in my judgment of what kind of a fish it is. But one of the things that I go for is the color of the inside of the mouth.
Okay, what is this
Okay,
fish?
now that's a Chinook salmon. And the fish is completely black, got black gums on the inside of its mouth, where the inside of the mouth of a coho salmon,
Oh, we'll get the coho over here.
is not as black, and it's got some white on the inside and kind of grayish looking gums.
Okay, and we'll compare that. Get a look at that there, that grayish type with the blackish mouth of any of these Chinooks, even the big ones here. Their tongues and their gums are black. Now, let's take the brown trout here.
Okay, the brown trout is typical of all your trout. It's got a white mouth all the way around on the inside. It has no black to it like either your coho or your Chinook salmon, and that's a good characteristic. Another thing that I kind of go by, although it doesn't always hold true, is the fact that most of the time, at this time of the year in August, the Chinook salmon are really losing their, the coho salmon are really losing their scales. The scales come off very readily.
Oh,
just
I
like
see right there.
You can knock them off with your finger. And often when you net the fish and bring the fish into the boat, the whole deck of the boat is going to be covered with scales that come off just during the netting process. It does happen to a certain extent with Chinook salmon, but it doesn't happen with brown trout.
Well, we can see that right there. The scales are intact on all of these fish. Well, there's some tips on how to tell the difference between Chinook salmon by the spots on the tail. The shape of the tail is one thing we didn't mention, Pete. Let's compare that right here. Brown trout, characteristically, has a square tail.
And your kings and coho, most like you can see the V in here in the camera here.
Right.
You spread them out and they still have it. And the brown is just right straight across the back.
Okay, well, those are some things to remember about identifying your catch. And tell you what we'll do. If you didn't catch all of that information, we're going to put it in Inside Michigan Outdoors. Ed, where can folks get a hold of that publication?
To receive Inside Michigan Outdoors, grab a pencil and paper because the address will be up right after this recipe, and that recipe will be in our next issue.
Well, now that's the meat that everybody likes to take out of salmon and trout and all of our Great Lakes fish, the fillets, boneless fillets. But you know, there's a little morsel of delicacy that Jerry O'Brien has introduced me to. You did this walleye fishing.
Right.
The cheeks.
Hey, that's right.
And you say it's possible to get cheeks out of salmon, too.
Big cheeks.
Okay, well, show us how it's done.
It's a little bigger than the walleye, but it's also a little tougher to get out because of the tough skin. So now I'm going to go back basically the same way that I do walleye, except I got to come way up higher.
Mm-hmm.
And that skin is tough. Now, if I can miss that cheekbone, there.
You cut down into that
Down,
meat.
Clear up towards the lip, way behind the eye. See how far behind the eye this is coming? Up here, right up towards the eye, like that. Peel it over.
And take it out.
And peel it out. Now there's the size of a cheek. Them walleye down there are about the size of a dime.
Yeah? Okay, that's a good one. And you say this is a delicacy
It's
even
a
in
delicacy.
salmon?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Kay Richey, you're a wildlife chef of exquisite beauty and talent. And in the kitchen, you make up things. You know that?
I'm making this up, Fred.
You're making this up, but it's a recipe for the fish cheeks that you just saw Jerry O'Brien cut out of those salmon. Now, you've had, what, scallops this way?
Well, I have had fish cheeks that have been taken out of lake trout and various different things, but I've never had them out of the salmon, and I have never fixed them myself. So
Okay.
we're just ad-libbing this.
Well, you've written a book, Savor the Wild, and you know wild game cooking. And by the way, Kay's going to be at our small game workshop coming up September 11th. So, but go ahead and lay this new creation on us, Kay.
Okay.
What do we have here? Butter in the pan.
Okay, we have some butter melted, and we're going to put just a very little bit of onion. And we're going to scrape some lemon off into this.
Well, I'll see how we can go wrong.
I hope not.
I bet you could make old hunting boots taste good.
Would you like to try that sometime
we
on your
just
show,
might,
Fred?
for the ultimate challenge. Boy. Now, what else?
Okay, now we're going to put some burgundy in. How about just,
Well, you go ahead and pour it.
okay.
Boy, that smells good.
Okay,
Should I
and
get-
let's just put some of that in. You know, that's,
Seasoning salt
Yeah,
and-
not an awful
How
lot
much?
of that. Well, we don't know. We're going to have to
About
taste
that
it
much?
here. Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
That sounds good. Looks good. Okay,
Now, that's our sauce. We
Now
lay the
let's
fish cheeks
just-
in.
we're just going to kind of saute and simmer these and see what it.
Well, this is an
Okay.
experiment. Kay Richey's experiment here with these salmon cheeks. Saute them until, what, about 5 minutes or so?
I would think that they'll be done in that length of time.
Okay, we'll get them out then and taste them. Boy, they look good. While we're waiting for that to happen, why don't we go to our outdoor calendar? Because, you know, you're going to be at our Small Game Hunters Workshop talking about cooking wild game recipes. And that's one of the items on our outdoor calendar right now with Ed Groves.
And Wildlife Chief Charlie Gunther explains.
I think we could put a lot more emphasis on small game than we have in the past, Fred. We've been very successful managing deer, and the hardest thing to do when you're successful is to change programs and change your mind. I think the things we're doing with wild turkeys in southern Michigan would give you some idea of the emphasis that we're going to place in small game management in the next few years. We also have, besides the turkey project, which I think is going to be highly successful, we're looking at ways to increase pheasant hunting. At one time, the most popular game bird in southern Michigan. It will never be in the heydays it was in the late 30s and early 40s, but I honestly think there are more ways that we can work to increase wild pheasant hunting, and that's what we intend to do.
Well, I spent a whole lifetime studying them, and thank God I've finally been recognized as being one of the experts on deer knowledge. I've written several books on them. The last one is considered the Bible on deer.
It is a fantastic book, The Deer of North America. What about our Michigan whitetails? Well, tell me something that I don't know about our Michigan whitetail.
Well, I could probably tell you a lot of things. One of the major things with your Michigan whitetails is the fact that they're larger up here than they are farther south, because of the fact that the farther you get from the equator, the larger every species of the animal is. So just geographically, your deer are much larger, heavier boned deer than you have down the southern states.
Are deer as smart as a lot of hunters and people talk about, or are they just nervous?
I think that deer have great more intelligence than most people give them credit for. Probably the thing that saves deer more than anything else is that the deer stand still and let the hunters do the walking. Everybody has a concept that when you see a deer and you got a deer flush or you've shot at him and he takes off, man, you think he's late for an appointment in the next county. And what happens is that deer only runs as far as he gets to the first cover, for the simple reason that when he's running, he can't smell, he can't hear, he can't see. That is, he can't see that well. So all the speed is just to get him to cover. The minute he gets to cover, he's going to jump inside the cover and he's going to stop and stand still. It's been proven. In fact, it was proven here in Michigan on a Georgia preserve where they had enclosed deer, and they found out that 90% of the time...
He's an encyclopedia of knowledge on whitetails. Leonard Lee Rue III.
Well, they've been in there just a couple minutes, Kay.
Boy, it didn't take very long, Fred.
Okay, well, Ed, here's a couple of the salmon cheeks prepared with Kay
right.
Richey's new recipe.
Well, if these are half as good as walleye, I tell you.
Okay, see, are they is half as good?
How about twice as good?
Well, twice as good? Boy, I don't know. Those walleye cheeks were hard to beat. Have you tried these yet, Kay? Here, take a little taste there. See what you think. Well, they just fall apart. So, Kay Richey's used this for scallops. What's your reaction?
I think they're very good.
Hey, if that's what the chef says, they gotta be good.
Very good. We are not throwing out any more salmon cheeks.
Okay, well, great. If you would like that recipe, or if you'd like anything you've seen on tonight's show, information on Kay Richey's book, Savor of the Wild. Oh, perfect. You're watching Ron LeClaire, a longbow shooter from Potterville, who's shooting plastic discs right out of the air. That's 2 out of 2. He's using a bow, which is, ooh, you nicked it. You nicked it. Ron, put it there. That's some mighty fine shooting.
Thank you.
Okay, you're using a longbow. Let's look at this. There's no pulleys on it. There's no gadgets. There's no stabilizer bars. There's no sights.
It's simple, isn't it?
It's simple. Yeah, it looks mighty simple what you're doing, but I happen to know that it's a lot more difficult.
Not really. With a little practice, anybody can do it. It's basic archery, and there's nothing to go wrong. Just a stick and a string, and it's easy and it's fun.
Okay, well, this is called longbow shooting, traditional archery, something that's coming back now. I see a lot more interest in going back to longbows than going to, well, even maybe crossbows.
Yes.
You think?
I see that too every day. At shoots, we see more people all the time that are interested in longbows and getting back to basics.
Okay, you're probably the only guy in the state that specializes in selling longbows to people and longbow equipment. There's not a lot of it.
No, but there will be. I think supply and demand is going to create more, yeah.
Okay, well, here's the fellow. Look at this book right here. Howard Hill, The Man and the Legend. Now, a lot of us have heard for a long time about Fred Bear as being the legend. But Howard Hill goes back before Fred Bear, doesn't he?
Yes, a little bit before.
But he used a longbow, and Fred used the more modern things, and a lot of people haven't heard of Howard Hill.
Fred in his early days shot a longbow too, but he graduated to the recurve. Howard stayed with the longbow because he made his living with that bow, and he said that he could shoot it better. For shooting exhibitions, shooting coins out of the air and whatnot, it was more accurate.
He could shoot it faster.
Shooting coins out of the air?
Shooting coins. He started out with silver dollars, half dollars, quarters, nickels, and dimes.
Wow.
And he was probably about the greatest aerial shot that's ever been.
Why don't we have people like that anymore?
I don't know. Good question. I'm trying.
Yeah, well, you're doing a good job. Well, a longbow is probably more practical to use, I think, for, say, small game hunting than a compound because it doesn't have the letdown. You can snap shoot.
Right. You can shoot it faster. You don't even have to come to a full draw. If you have to shoot fast, you don't have to come back to where the pulley's let off. You can just bring it back and let it go, kind of like shooting a slingshot. And it's...
But that's sort of a gimmick, though, isn't it? I mean, that speed shooting?
Not really. You can use it in game like pheasants flushing, rabbits, and squirrels running along a limb. You always get a chance for a snapshot with a bow.
But taking a second shot, you can pop off. I hear you can pop off shots in pretty rapid succession.
With a back quiver, you can get a second and third shot quite fast. Yes.
Well, that's sort of the charm of this traditional archery. What is a longbow made of? Are they just all wood?
They're made out of wood laminations, 4 or 5 laminations backed and faced with fiberglass.
Since there's not too many of them, I mean, you won't find these in most archery stores.
Not too many, no. There's most of the bows that are sold today are custom made by bowyers from around the country. There's a few manufacturers that are making them, but not too many.
What do they cost?
Anywhere from $150 up to over $200, depending on the type of wood that's in them. Some of the wood is more expensive.
If somebody wants to get into longbow shooting, what do they do? Who do they contact? Is there an association, a club?
We have a magazine out called the Longbow Shooter's Digest, or Traditional Archery Digest, as it's called now.
Oh, right here.
And it's out of Tucson, Arizona. Anderson Archery in Grand Ledge handles that magazine, and I also carry it.
Okay, well, we're going to have a little article in Inside Michigan Outdoors, our next issue, about you, longbow shooting, with the addresses, how to get this information. And, of course, you'll be at our Small Game Hunters Workshop?
Sure.
Okay, great. You'll be demonstrating. In fact, let's have another demonstration of this. We got 3 out of 3 in the air. Ron LeClaire, a man who shoots a longbow. Oh, 4 out of 4. This is some shooting. A longbow is a lot easier to use. Nicked it. We'll call that 5 out of 5.
I'm back now.
In an afterthought, Ron LeClaire said that he's going to take a shot at a $50, a la Howard Hill. You guys ready? Oh, that was pretty close. We can try that again? Have you ever hit a $50 before?
Yeah, I've hit quarters before, too, but, you know, some days you got it, some days you haven't.
Yeah, okay. Hey, that's all right. That's all right, Ron. I'm impressed. When is your book coming out?
It's going to be a few years yet.
It will be. That's terrific. You just can't beat the fishing at this time of year, so come out and support us at the workshop. I'm going to close this show with a little treat here. Richard Blue Skeen, who's a slingshot expert. He'll be there and give you lessons on shooting a slingshot for small game. He does it very well. Just watch.
This is one I use for strictly speed shooting, just to see how many shots you can get off. This is Kent Shepard, the Vice President of the National Slingshot Association, is one that got me shooting this one. And this is where I got it from, because it's, the advantage of this is it brings the pad back in between your prongs, so where you don't have to straighten it out with your fingers when you go to shoot. And using this one, just strictly see how many shots you can get off in a certain amount of time.
Have you ever hit a $50 before?
Yeah, I've hit quarters before, too, but, you know, some days you got it, some days you haven't.
Yeah, okay. Hey, that's all right. That's all right, Ron. I'm impressed. When is your book coming out?
It's going to be a few years yet.
It will be. That's terrific. Terrific.